Right now on Tech Radio, it's time to get deep.
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online and on air with RT Radio, we bring you the latest in tech from Ireland and around the world. You're welcome to episode 1054, looking at the 7 biggest stories of the week. The biggest, of course, which is DeepSeek, the new AI which has turned the world upside down in the last 7 days. Loads of other stuff as well going on, including tech scams on Irish punters, the relaunch of Concorde, and Google is planning something huge for their Irish HQ in Dublin.
From techcentral.ie, this is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Joining me as always, the editor-in-chief of Tech Central, Niall Kitson. Niall, now in all fairness, the first time you mentioned the top story this week was, I think, at least 2 weeks ago. Yep. And then you were going, we have to include in last week's podcast. And then I went, no, we've run out of time. Yep. And then after that, 4 days after that, it blew up. And now I'm feeling a little silly. Well, so I owe you an apology, firstly.
I'll take that. But yeah, given that we were only talking last week about Stargate, the Stargate project, $500 billion in AI infrastructure, because we need giant data centers and giant, power infrastructure and loads of, GPUs to make AI happen. And what did we learn towards the tail end of last week?
Is that you don't need any of that.
You don't need any of that. You don't need that. And not only do you not need a giant data center, you can run it locally on your own computer if you wish, and be completely secure and not have any interference or hand in part by either the US or Chinese government. Because this is the joy of open source software.
This is the story of DeepSeek, which is a Chinese operation. And basically what they've done is they've designed their own version of ChatGPT. And they said, yeah, you know how ChatGPT cost like 100 billion? We did it for €10.
Well, $6 million to be exact. It was the project, sort of a COVID project, really, of a hedge fund manager whose name was Liang Wenfeng. And DeepSeek employs like 100 people, and it has a very distinct, very focused mission statement, which is the creation of artificial general intelligence. They want to reach the singularity, the point at which AI not only meets but exceeds human capacity. Now, DeepSeek has always worked off a comparatively shoestring budget, because they were using an awful lot of GPUs, NVIDIA GPUs, that weren't current generation, because as you know, there's a ban on the sale of NVIDIA GPUs in China. Yeah. So basically this chap bought up as many NVIDIA chips as he could, and they were all last generation, not current generation at all. Got as many as he could, and just said, okay, right, this is what I have to work with. Fine, let's do this. Proceeded to work on his own project. People thought, it's a bit weird, but we'll let him at it. DeepSeek, I think it had its first version released last year, but it's just in the last week that it sort of came to prominence. It's now outperforming ChatGPT on the Apple App Store. And since its grand debut, probably last Friday when we were just going live, it managed to wipe off 17% of NVIDIA's value, which is $600 billion.
Well, it is a huge shock, because all of these American tech companies have been going, it's wildly expensive, and the equipment you need and the power to generate AI, blah, blah, blah. And essentially, it's like, if you look at the American AI industry, they're like Ferrari. Do you know what I mean? Top end, horrendously expensive, right? And then this Chinese operation is kind of like, yeah, but we just built a Ferrari in my garage. Yeah. It's my uncle's garage down the road.
It does, and it's not
and
even.
It's the same thing.
It's cheaper, but it's not to say it's any worse.
No, it's actually I find it very, very good. They were saying that, and the running cost is the other thing as well, right? When you're talking like kind of a million token, like a token is, I think it's either an actual character or it's a word, but it's something small like that as a token, all right? So if you're going to be using this thing a lot, you're definitely going to need a million tokens, all right? From what I know with OpenAI, you're looking around about maybe $15 for a million tokens, okay? With DeepSeek, it's not $15. It's 55 cents.
Wow.
All right. Now that's 1/30th of the cost to use it. It's phenomenal. It's making me smile all week at the turnover, because we were shocked. Initially, when the story came out about America was going to ban TikTok. America's going to ban TikTok? What the hell is going on? All right. And it's kind of like, last week, that was the whole big story. It was kind of like America's just banned TikTok. And it felt like with DeepSeek, China was going, oh yeah, here, hold my beer.
Yeah, that's
Boom.
it. You want to ban something that we've made, do you? You think you can live without TikTok? Well, how about living without this bad boy?
Yeah, exactly. Completely undermining the industry. So on Monday, when the story broke, or when they released their research paper, like everybody went mad and went, they can do it for what? And it seems to have recovered in just a couple of days. But there's still choppy waters ahead, because we've had results out from Microsoft, which weren't great. We had results out from Facebook, which were they were great for the last quarter of last year, but they're kind of going, well, I'm not so really sure about the future. I think Apple is to come this week, and then the Fed is meeting this week, and that will affect interest rates. And all of these things affect the stock market, which affect the tech companies, which affect the value that they have. And now then on top of that, you've got DeepSeek coming in, and they're more or less saying, we can do the same as you do for like 1/30th of the cost. And how they do it is interesting, but I'll tell you about that in a sec. Go on.
No, I was about to segue into that very point. So yeah, tell us how it works.
Well, from what I understand, right, there's a kind of a three process that they're able to do with DeepSeek. Okay, the first thing is they're saying to the AI, it's a chain of thought process. Okay, so if you download DeepSeek onto your mobile phone and you enter a query into it, it will actually show you what it's thinking. So I did one just kind of before we came on, and all I put into the query was Bono's wife. I didn't say who is or anything like that. I just went Bono's wife, and it gives you its little thinking. It starts off, okay, I need to find out information about Bono's wife based on the provided search results. Let's start by going through each of the web pages to see which ones are relevant. This is not the answer. This is the AI thinking to itself and going through the reasoning. So it says the first web page I see, Bono, is about Bono in 2025, but the content is a bit scattered. It mentions celebrity smoking and net worth, but not much about his wife. Nothing useful here. Web page 2 is titled, Who is Bono's wife? Ali Hewson. All right. That's exactly what the user is asking for. And it goes through this. There's 12 web pages that it looked at. All right. And it's comparing the information from all of the web pages to actually come up with what it reasons is an actual answer. Yeah. It's like you or I would do if we are booking a holiday or buying something on Amazon. You look at all the reviews and you come to a conclusion.
Or you remember maths class in school, it wasn't just put down the answer. How did you get there?
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. That's it. Do your work in the side margin so we can see how are you thinking. So that's the first thing that it does, right? So it has a chain of thought that it does to itself, all right? And then when it gets something right, it goes, ding, that's good. But if it gets something wrong, it goes, why did I do that? Let me go back and see how I could have done that better. So that's what it's doing at the same time. And then the third stage where it's able to do so well is a thing called model distillation. And I mean, that says it, model distillation, is distilling information from a much larger model. So it's like a child learning from a parent. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't have all of the information or the knowledge that a parent has, but it's learning what it needs and it's holding on to that data. So that's why they're able to do it so slim and so trim and so fast. It's quite amazing.
Yeah. And one thing that fascinates me, just at a sort of a macro level, is who is annoyed at the invention of DeepSeek and its popularity, because this is where you learn how good it actually is. And straight up, you had people going, oh, open source, half people going, yes, this is brilliant. You can do it yourself. The other half, I know there's a lot of people thinking, yeah, but it could be anything. Is it secure? Your user experience may vary depending on what you're doing with it. That's not great. And then you get the likes of OpenAI going, oh, but you took our model. You're using our LLM. And Facebook going,
OpenAI, who trained their stuff on every copyrighted work in the world without permission, and now they're going, you're using our stuff.
Yeah, it's not cool to do that. You shouldn't be doing it. I mean, when you're hitting criticism like that, I just think it's hilarious.
I think it's interesting though that it is open source, because all of the other AIs are closed source. So you don't know what the code is and you don't know what's in there. And one of the things we have been saying for the last year or two, well, we're giving all of this information about ourselves to an AI, and it's an artificial intelligence that remembers everything. Do you know the scariest thing that you can put into any of those AIs, ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever, all right? Especially if you have an account and you have enabled memory, all right? The scariest question you can put in is, what do you know about me?
Really?
Now, I don't have the memory turned on, so it shouldn't be remembering what I'm doing. But a friend of mine does, and she showed it to me, and it gave a whole description of her personality and the type of person that she is and the kind of things that she liked. And I went,
that's scary.
That was just generated from the questions that she's been asking the AI. So that is but anyways, they're all closed source up until this point in time. Okay. And we've been thinking, well, kind of what about privacy and what are they doing with our data and how is it being used? Whereas DeepSeek is open source. Now, I love open source software because the source is out there. And if there's anything dicky in it, you'd be damn sure that somebody's going to point it out. So that's why I would trust open source a little bit more, and I would find it. But then I suppose on a security point of view, then it's kind of like if you are running it on your own machine, is somebody going to attack you, or are there going to be vulnerabilities in it, or whichever? It's kind of, it throws open a whole load of interesting security concerns. It's only been a week, and already the Italians. Already the Italians are knocking on the door of the data commissioner going, yes, we think this DeepSeek might be violating data of Europeans and especially Italians.
Well, who is anyone to argue, because the answer is probably yes. But, what are they going to do? I mean, they're sitting in China going, eh.
Yeah, well, true. And then the other thing, because they've become so popular in the last week, is now they're getting hit left, right and centre with cyber attacks.
Yeah. And that's another thing. I mean, are these OpenAI fanboys?
Well, there you go. Conspiracy theorist. Yeah. That's my job.
That's your job. But is that possible? But, the story doesn't even end there, because Alibaba just earlier this week released the new version of Qwen, which is their DeepSeek competitor. Weird thing to say, that DeepSeek as a competitor, sort of ChatGPT competitor, if you will. And they say that it's even better again, that it performs 2.5 times as well. So there are plenty of ChatGPT competitors out there. You just have to know where to look for them. China seems to be the place to do so right now. But here's a side story. News that also broke this week. The Trump administration is trying to lay off about 5% of the federal workforce. They are offering 8 months' pay for you to go away.
Yeah, just go away, yeah.
Go away. And, it's not even, you can't work for government again. You can apply for another government job if one happens to come up. It doesn't preclude you from working in any other part of the public service, but just the job that you have now, please go. Now, I mean, the military is excluded, the postal service are excluded, so it's not a blanket offer. But what are the government using to make up for that potential lost productivity?
Go on.
ChatGPT.
Oh, no.
There's a government version just being released, and it's based on ChatGPT Enterprise. So it's not happening for free or anything, but here you go. This is Doge at work, the Department of Government Efficiency. Right. Elon Musk's pet project that he did not get an office for in the West Wing and was unhappy about it.
Was he really unhappy about it? About not being an official government person.
Oh, well, no, he is. Well,
Like the department, it's not a government department.
It's not a government department,
exactly, yeah.
and he's in charge of it, so he can do whatever he wants. He doesn't have to, resign from.
And there are advantages
or
to
anything
that.
like that. Plenty of advantages. But it's just the White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, a very formidable woman by all accounts, basically said, no, you can't have an office in the White House. You can go across the road to that other building where the other government departments are. I forget the name of it now. You can go there if you want, but you're not having an office in the White House. That news did not go down well, but she's the boss, so that's it.
Very interesting. Very interesting. That kind of ties in with another story. PwC had a survey out here in Ireland during the week.
Yeah.
And they were talking about Irish businesses and their involvement with AI. And there's kind of two very kind of conflicting results from the survey, if you want to put it that way. 98% of Irish businesses have come back and they said, yeah, we've played around with it and we use it and we've tried it out and stuff like that. But only 6% have actually gone all in.
Okay.
And are using it as a serious tool.
Well, here's the thing. I was talking to a very eminent man in the IT industry a couple of months ago, and he talked about something called shadow AI. Now, for years, we were talking about shadow IT, which was basically you might have been issued with a smartphone at work, but your personal smartphone is much better. So you start using your work stuff on your preferred smartphone instead of the one you were given, which means that it can't be managed or traced or secured or anything like that. And that's called, shadow. It's the unofficial devices that get used. And he sort of said the next thing is shadow AI, where people are using AI in their work, but of course it's not managed, it's not secured. You could be using any product, and there's no official policy or protections in place to protect the business. So that's one thing that we're seeing. We are also seeing employers being, super interested, but at the same time, no, we don't want to pay to upskill people.
Okay.
So it's an untapped resource at the moment. And you can understand the reticence of, okay, well, we don't want to be forking out big money for professional ChatGPT accounts. Now you've got a cheaper alternative that you can run locally. So if you've got a smart IT department, you can have your own local LLM go to work on it. Interesting.
Just sorry about the local thing with DeepSeek. I was looking into that to see like how local and how quick does it use. A lot of it will depend on the machine that you have. So you can run it on something like a MacBook or a Mac Mini, or a string of Mac Minis is even better. Okay. You need lots and lots of RAM. You don't necessarily need huge GPU for it, because the GPU is used more in the training of the AI than it is in the usage of the AI. So RAM is a thing. But if you download a small data set, almost if you want to call it like a portable data set from DeepSeek, you're able to run it on a consumer grade PC and get reasonable response times. If you download the bigger data sets, it can take minutes and maybe even up to 20 minutes before you even get a response, so it's all varying. So that on the local side of things. About using AI in the workplace, I think it's hilarious. In my own workplace, okay? So a lot of people that are working for me now are in their 20s and 30s, okay? I literally had to bang their heads against desks in order to get them to use AI in the first place. No, that's strange. I don't know how to work that, blah, blah, blah. And like I be saying, look, here it is, pull it up, blah, 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 do this, and then literally you see the jaw drop, go, oh my God, that's amazing. All right. Now the problem is the other side of it, right, is they're now just using the AI to do the thinking for them, which is equally driving me mad, because they don't think, they just go, I just put in the AI and then whatever it says, boom.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like,
well, that's the thing. Show your work. Show your work.
Yeah, well, I would nearly say that to people working for me rather than the AI. But anyway, listen, we've only got about 10 more minutes for newsy stuff for get into our interview this week. Tell me about the whole Meta investigation, because the Data Protection Commission here in Ireland did an investigation with Meta, and we've talked about it, and there were huge fines, and we were all going, hey, way to go. Now, Europe has kind of come in and went, lads.
Yeah, okay. This is a story that goes back to 2018. If you can believe it. And our friend Max Schrems, who became famous through his original campaign, Europe versus Facebook, I think it was called. And he came to prominence because he asked Facebook to give him a copy of everything they know about him, right? All his personal data. What do you know about me? And at the time, this was pre-GDPR, they still had to provide a copy.
Yeah.
And he was presented with this absolute stack of paper, absolutely mental. And it sort of caught on as sort of a viral thing. And his argument was that, no, you shouldn't be able to gather this much information about me. GDPR came in. Right. And you might remember that at the time, we all had Facebook accounts anyway. But when GDPR came in, there was sort of messages on the screen. If you don't want to, adhere to the following, you can delete your Facebook account. Here's what we do with your data. If you want to keep using Facebook, this means you agree to all these terms and conditions. Subsequently, Max Schrems not him personally, but Schrems went on to found a consumer advocacy group called NOIB, or None of Your Business. And they took an action against Meta, which of course is the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, rebranded, I think, in 2021 as such. So the complaint went against Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp, I think, individually, on behalf of 3 users who took issue with this action. Their argument was, no, it shouldn't have been, either or. We should be able to go in and control what people see, what people use, because this is for purposes of ad targeting. It's not for, any sort of benevolent purpose or anything like that.
Saving lives or anything.
Yeah, it's not doing anything in particular. This is all to do with your commercial model. I should be able to control what we do. The DPC investigated it and said, you know what, Facebook are kind of right on this one. You decided you're going to use the service. These are the terms of the service. Well, that's it. You don't really have a case. Okay. Which turned into, actually, yeah, you guys kind of do have a case. So here you go, Facebook. We're fining you 210 million and you've got to do the following. You've got to change some of the language in your terms and conditions to bring it more into line with GDPR, but still the whole idea of you tap, you consent. Yeah, I mean, that's roughly okay. As fast forward a little bit, this was in 2022, it took for this decision to be reached. So we're 4 years in. The DPC took this around Europe, and all the other regulators that saw it said this is a load of nonsense. No, this isn't fair, because as we know, the only reason that the DPC was given this investigation to begin with is because Facebook has its European operation in Ireland, like so many of the big tech companies. And the whole point of GDPR was that, not the whole point, but you've got this one-stop shop. You don't need to sue a company in every little country that it operates in. Just go to the European base. It makes so much sense. And as a result, the action happened here. But all the other European regulators basically said, no, this isn't right. The European Data Protection Commission had a look at the decision and said, yeah, no, we're not accepting that decision. That's not right. The scope of your investigation was far too narrow. We want you to go back and start again from scratch. What did the DPC do? They took the Europeans to court and said, you can't compel us to do anything. Our decision is our decision. This action was raised in Ireland. That's it.
So basically, DPC did their investigation. This is the Irish DPC. And then they made the decision. They made their fine, whatever it was. And then the rest of Europe went, lads, now come on.
Yep.
You're being too nice. Mm-hmm. You need to go down harder. And then the Irish went, now don't be telling me what to do.
Yeah.
So what happened after that court case then?
Yeah. So this is kind of where we are now. In 2023, so 2 years ago now, the DPC took the European Data Protection Board to court to make sure that their integrity would not be impinged upon. The European General Court since came back this week and said, yeah, you're wrong. You should have acquiesced to the wishes of the European body instead of taking it on yourself. Start from scratch. Back you go. Now, this has been met with a very diplomatic statement from the DPC, basically saying, We'll have a look, see what it means. There is a course for appeal. They can go to the Court of Justice of the European Union. That's the highest court the EU has. I would be surprised if it doesn't, to be honest. The Irish Council for Civil Liberties sent a press release basically saying, yes, Europe is completely in the right. This decision is sort of not quoting verbatim on this, but it's basically an indictment of what the DPC was like under the previous commissioner, Helen Dixon. Now, Ireland has been slammed by data protection organisations across Europe. They see us as slow. They see us as too sympathetic to big tech. They think we're compromised by the sheer number of multinationals that are in Ireland and what they contribute to the Irish economy in terms of corporation tax. Right. So we're seen as being slow and a bit of a soft touch. So, when we go to Europe with something that looks kind of favourable, like even going, yeah, this whole decision thing, we reckon that's a contract, What signal does that send out? Well, it's sort of, we're pro-business. We're going to take the business angle on this. By the way, so, do we look compromised?
We don't want to upset the tenants.
We don't want to upset the tenants. So it's, Europe is really keeping a close eye on what the DPC does. Right. And part of Ireland's foreign policy, in my opinion, for years, and this stretches to, military, this stretches to immigration, it all seems to be predicated on nobody knowing what we're doing and nobody caring what we're doing. And all of a sudden, when it comes to data protection, everyone cares what we're doing. And we get an awful lot of scrutiny for it, and rightly so. So what's going to happen? Well, I think Facebook was reissued a fine in the 330 million bracket. And of course, some rewordings to be done. But of course, we're back to square one with this 6 years on. It doesn't take much to get the process rolling, it seems. 3 complaints, 6 years, and still nothing concrete. Facebook are going to be hit big when this thing is finally over. I give it another 6 years before everybody agrees on something. But that's where we are. That's where we are.
Really interesting story, actually, because the DPC here is just so important in the whole tech world globally, because their opinion or whatever they do will greatly influence Europe and is usually backed up by Europe, which then affects what happens in the States and stuff like that. I mean, the fact that we've got these bloody cookie notices on everything is from, now I don't know whether it came from Ireland, but it's certainly an EU thing. So, but it's interesting to see what we are doing here is being perceived in the EU, because we have this little thing like, sure, now everybody loves the Irish and everything we do is great, and aren't we a wonderful country, and haven't we got all the big lads here? But actually to hear that there are people around Europe going, come on lads, you're a soft touch, it's a bit of a wake-up call for us, but it's interesting. Listen, I wonder, can I go through, I have 3 stories just to share with you really quickly. I'm going to try and do them as fast as I can, all right, because I want to get into the interview. Firstly, I was going to ask you, we're used to being scammed and all that kind of stuff. Have you been scammed in the last 12 months? Yes or no?
No.
No. Okay. I would say that I have not been scammed, but I have tried to have been scammed. Have you got a scam text or anything like that? Or
I usually get something claiming to be from Unpulsed or DHL saying, okay, your package has arrived, click here to pay the duty.
A new survey from Wise says that 80% of Irish people have been targeted by scammers. So we're both in that group, all right? Interesting. I don't even know why they went into this in an equal equality society that we are, but they compared to see how much loss was suffered by males and how much loss was suffered by females. The average loss for a female was €1,500 and for a male, €2,100.
God, we're morons, aren't we?
And it could be even worse, right? Because the survey also said that men are less likely to admit to being scammed. It could be even higher than that. Who knows, But you and I are kind of sitting here very comfortable in, of course they sent me the text, but I haven't been scammed. 60% of people said that they felt they were well informed, but they're concerned for vulnerable family and friends. It would never happen to me, but I'm worried about my mum. The other thing is Google are planning you know their HQ down in Barrow Street. It's huge, right? I think it's 7 stories or something like that, all right? What they want to do is they want to change one of the walls. I think it's the wall that's facing out onto the Liffey. And they want to make it a massive art installation with interactive and virtual elements which are powered by AI. They want to have it so that if you're walking down the quays and you see this thing glowing off the Google wall, is that you can point your phone at it and there'll be augmented reality to tell you more about what you're seeing.
That's very cool.
It is very cool. Dublin City Council are supporting it. I'm not too sure. I'm kind of one of these people. I probably want to see it first before I make my opinion. I did see stuff on Liberty Hall a couple of years ago. And I thought it was quite cool. They didn't run it for very long. But anyway, that'll be interesting. And then the last, sorry, I've got an Anne finally in a second. But the other news story this week is that the Concorde aircraft is back. There's a company in the States, they're trying to develop the next Concorde, if you like. Yeah. And what they've done is they've made I suppose it'll be a prototype because it's a smaller version of their commercial aircraft, and they call it Baby Boom, and they tested it this week over the Mojave Desert. It went 1.1 Mach, which and it did it 3 times before they ran out of airspace. Okay. Because they can't fly supersonic over populated areas, so it's like, oh, we've run out of space, we'll have to slow down. So they're planning for the full commercial service. Actually, is kind of interesting because Concorde did 2.1 or 2.2 Mach, which is over twice the speed of sound. This one will only do 1.7 Mach top speed, but it's still twice as fast as a current commercial airliner. So you would do the Atlantic, instead of doing it in 6 hours, you do it in 3 hours. So interesting. They say they've done deals with United American Airlines. I think it's amazing. Commercially, I don't think it's going to work because I just think the price will be too prohibitive. Anyways, my and finally story for this week, you're going to love this, and it comes from France, okay? We're all used to the whole thing that you shouldn't use your phone while you're driving, okay? Sure. So in France, a guy's blah, 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 going along, comes to a toll. All the tolls take credit cards. So he takes out his iPhone, tap to pay, boom, does it on the thing, gets a fine for €90 for using his phone while being in charge of a motor vehicle. Ridiculous. Oh. Ridiculous. Apparently Macron has heard of this and he said he's going to sort it out and change the highway code, but that is crazy. Anyway, there we go. That's all the news that is news for this week. As always, thank you, Niall.
Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland.
Meta and Amazon made headlines this month over their dropping of diversity, equity, and inclusivity programs. At the same time, Apple and Microsoft pushed back against investors to retain theirs. It seems that DEI is under threat from a changing political and cultural climate in the US, but does that have to be the case over here in Ireland and across the EU? Michelle McDaid is founder of The Leading Place, and she had a chat with Niall Kitson about what happens when politics and human resources collide.
Michelle, there's a new administration in the States. Apparently there's a new kind of energy has come along with it. We know Mark Zuckerberg went on the Joe Rogan podcast and talked about the need for a more masculine energy at Meta. From your perspective, what's going on here? I mean, is this a knock-on effect of, the alpha Trump arriving and resetting the zeitgeist and giving white men the permission to be bosses again? Or is there something else going on here?
Well, I don't think they need permission to be bosses again because there's a lot more white men who are in leadership roles at the moment. I think that this has been there's been a move towards this for a while. You can see some of there's been articles about companies dropping DEI. There's kind of more conservative views coming in, but I think in a broad sense, I don't think it's as bad as it looks. Now, obviously, I'm concerned with the things that I'm hearing Mark Zuckerberg saying we need more masculine energy in tech where women are underrepresented. And I think it's important that we create environments where everyone can thrive. So that would be concerning. But I also think bad news sells, and we can get a feeling that things are worse than they are from, the headlines.
Yeah, and in looking at why large corporates, and there's a couple of them, McDonald's and I think Best Buy, maybe Walmart as well in the States, have dropped their DEI programs, it makes you wonder when companies come to evaluate how they're doing, it's a function of how their customers are feeling about a company, and by and large, customers are pretty happy. I mean, unless you're Facebook, where everybody complains about you, but everybody uses your service regardless. You've got the shareholders. I mean, markets are booming, profits are up. They seem to be happy. And employees who, because of DEI initiatives, seem to be happy. So why are DEI programs in the crosshairs?
Yeah, like I think it feels like a rebalance of power and trying to bring back old power structures. And I think, we were chatting just before we started this call about remote and hybrid working as well. And it's a similar sort of vibe of, maybe old school thinkers wanting to go back to old times. And, we can't go backwards, and we know what's possible now. So I think that there's a bit of that sort of, it's power, a power dynamic and a power struggle maybe, and trying to take back power. But I think overall, to keep it simple, if you have happy employees, you have happy customers. And if you are showing up to a workplace where you don't feel you can be at your best, where you are afraid to speak up, I talk a lot about psychological safety and trust. But if you don't have those in the workplace, and if you don't have, feel that it's safe to be yourself, how can you do your best work? And, I always say, if you want to create great products, the workforce needs to reflect the diversity of the world that we live in and of the customer base. And it's not just about diversity. And I think, when we talk about DEI, I think a lot of companies are moving to DEIB, including inclusion and belonging, and creating those workplaces where people feel they belong. And the feeling, if you don't feel like you belong, how can you do your best work?
I think that was part of the criticism of DEI programs, was that there was this built-in assumption that you weren't necessarily taking in the best candidates. You were bringing in people on the basis of their ethnicity or their gender, looking to artificially create a talent pipeline, as opposed to creating your own talent pipeline and making people feel safe enough that they can show up to work and thrive. Do you think that sort of diametrically opposed vision of DEI has really been a problem over the last few years?
Yeah, I think that, people that say things like, meritocracy is best, if it was working, then you're saying basically that if you have 19% of women in CEO roles, that the other 81% weren't good enough to do it. So like I think there's old school views, and people aren't educated and aren't curious. I always say, like, just none of us know everything about, I know my own lived experience. If I'm talking to people, I learn about theirs. But like, if you don't go and talk to people and try and understand, you're not gonna get it. And if you're a white man, you're in the top of the ladder of privilege. And privilege, sometimes people say, I'm not privileged, but I know I have privilege over others. So understanding your privilege can go a long way to understanding what other people have to go through all the time. Michael Kimmel has a brilliant TED talk on that, where he talks about, he says that if you've been in a position of privilege for a long time, merit or equity can feel like oppression.
That's a really interesting point, because I think we have people growing up and living in social structures that are there to benefit them first and foremost, but they haven't been part of that process. It's just what life is. So if, a young white man is living a certain lifestyle and somebody comes along and says, well, what you've been doing here is actually harmful and has been harmful for a long time, it's very easy to see how that can be quite painful, quite a painful process to have to realign yourself. Do you think that men are having problems adjusting to sort of, I don't want to say a new reality, but adjusting to different norms in the workplace, seeing as workplaces have been created with men in mind, but specifically with white men in mind?
Yeah, I think some men are having a problem here. Some probably aren't. I think that, yes, the workplace has been created by men for men, and a lot of things don't suit others. But I think that, we can. I guess if you think about that, I can't remember what it's called. Rogers. It's a where you work through, if you're the early adopters, the innovators, the early adopters, the laggards. And if you think about that kind of cycle that you go through, there's some people who are never going to want to know about how they can do better from a diversity point of view. And I don't think wasting your time on you're not going to convert some people. I think there's a lot of people who are curious and want to learn more. And I think it is really important that we are open to having respectful, kind conversations with people, because if they don't know what they're doing wrong, and if you're not able to talk to them in a way to explain it, I do think it always falls on the people in the marginalised groups to educate others. So I would say that men should be actively reading and trying to learn more. And if you read one book, The Authority Gap by Marianne Siegert, is really, really good. It gives a lot of data and talks about how, and I think data is where you can go to when you're not sure if you're making progress.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing that it's such a human problem, a soft skills problem, that you still that data is still such an important part of the toolkit in dealing with it. Have you found that managers get much more receptive to talking about issues of inclusion, even if it isn't under the DEI banner, if there is, the data there to back it up, that it becomes less of an ideological conversation and more one about a problem and a solution?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I was involved in my last role was setting up a developer experience group. And one of the things that I learned was all data is data. So sometimes, the engineer's opinion on how productive they are turns out is quite accurate. So you can have qualitative and quantitative data. I think if you just looked at quantitative data, you wouldn't have the full picture. But if you just spoke to people, you don't know, does that represent the norm? So I think it's helpful to have both qualitative and quantitative data. And actually, one of the things, I'm doing a master's in work and organisation behaviour at the moment, and what I'm finding is, how some of the things that I'd experienced as a leader, I'm now seeing where's the data to back up that belief that I had. And there's things that we all believe are correct, and maybe there isn't data to back it up. And, are we correct? So it's good to look at all those.
And just to look then at how workplace dynamics are changing at an organisational level. We went through 2 years of working from home, whether we liked it or not. And now the fallout is people are discovering, well, maybe I am pretty good working from home, or maybe 2 days a week in the office really does suit me. As somebody who's been working in sort of large organisations, how have you found that dynamic shifting from people that would have preferred to be office-based, thrust into having to work from home, and then reevaluating their relationship to their work? Is it a question of, you go the Facebook and the Twitter directions and start bringing people back into the office wholesale? Or do you go in the Spotify direction and think, well, you know what, you're all grown-ups, figure it out yourselves. These are the tasks, go do them.
Yeah, I think this topic, it's complex. It's not, there's not one answer. I love the tool polarity management, where it moves you from an either or to a both and. So you can actually look at what are the benefits of this side, what's the benefits of the other, what can you do what will help you understand if you're actually starting to go too far into one. But I also think we're working with humans, we need to, and they're adults, so my approach would be talk to your teams and trust your leaders to work with their teams to figure out how they can do things optimally. For me, it's about creating connection in the team and making sure the team are working together well. So there's some people who were in the office pre-COVID with earphones on all day. So why are you dragging them in to a big, loud office where they can't concentrate? But working with people, like there's some people maybe who get into a rut and don't even know that they haven't been connecting with people. So just creating opportunities for people to connect with each other. I think it's also important to like I was saying earlier, bad news sells. I think I've been listening to a number of people. Bruce Daisley and Christine Armstrong have had some great chats on this topic, and also Nick Bloom and Brian Elliott. And, you know, just looking at what it sounds from the media that actually there's more companies pulling their people back in to the office more, like even 5 days. But actually, what they were saying was, for every one Amazon, there's 2 Atlassians that are more progressive, and they're looking at doing things, you know, in a more inclusive way. So that's good to remember as well.
Do you find that having a well-stated, a well-formulated DEI policy is still a net talent attractor? I mean, I've seen smaller companies around Ireland with very well-defined policies that they're very, very proud of. Do you think that they are, when people are choosing a place to work, because that's what they can do in the tech sector a bit more than in others, that DEI is a pretty good attractor?
Yeah, I think it's important to have policies that are practices, because sometimes you can have policies that aren't actually used or people don't feel that they can use it. And I also think, like, especially in Ireland, it's a small place, and with really the world is small with social media. So companies need to remember that people are connected with people, and especially on LinkedIn, people will set up a connection, chat to others and check what their experience was. So really how you onboard and offboard people is really important for companies. I think that a lot of people are asking what the experience is now. And, you know, the younger generations, yes, having a meaning and purpose and having a good work culture is really important. But I also think, you know, I read a stat that the average age that women leave tech to set up their own business is 52. So there's certain times in your life where you go, enough this nonsense. And also, post-COVID, a lot of people have reflected on what's important to them and have decided, I'm not going to work in that kind of environment. So it's really, really important that we create environments where people can do their best.
So let's look forward a little bit. I mean, DEI as a term in the States, certainly at the moment, has become toxified. What do we end up calling it without calling it that?
Well, I think, you know, inclusion and belonging are 2 things that I think are really, really important. And that's really the outcome we're trying to get. You know, it's important to have a diverse team. But if you have a diverse team that don't feel like they can speak up and can contribute, that's actually not any benefit at all. So having an environment where people can feel included, that their voice counts, and it's really psychological safety where people can speak up and can share concerns, ideas, and feel that they will be listened to and respected. I think that's the key thing, really. But I think it's important. I think, you know, at this time now, there's a lot of people in marginalised groups and underrepresented groups that could be very concerned, and they have a reason to be concerned. And I think it's important to pause and actually reflect that. But I think that it's important that we don't, get bogged down maybe with the despair. And I think it's important to have hope and optimism and to actually think about what we can do, because I do think there's a lot of companies who are quietly working away and doing it, but maybe not being loud about it. And, you know, if I think about my own experience many years ago when there weren't as many people working remotely, I had flexibility and, people weren't talking about it as much, but we were quietly just allowing people to have the flexibility that kept them in the workplace. And I probably wouldn't have stayed in tech if I hadn't had that flexibility. It's such an important thing.
And that was Michelle McDaid, founder of The Leading Place, chatting with Niall Kitson.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That's it for our show this week. Do check out some more stories that we have online for you. We didn't manage to squeeze into the podcast, including...
Yeah, we got a little bit more on Trump's AI solution for keeping government working. Microsoft sets up a fund for local projects operating near its data centres. And Perplexity eyes up a bid for TikTok in the US.
TikTok. You'll find those and all more online at techcentral.ie. We're back again next Friday with a brand new show online and, of course, with RTE Radio 1 Extra. Until then, please do share our podcast with a friend. If they're into tech, just tell them to search for Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify, or now also on YouTube. Until next time, for myself, Dusty Rhodes, as always, thank you for listening. Have a great weekend.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland, or listen with RTE Radio 1 Extra. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.